No. Okay, never mind. I think I got it. Excuse me. You on?
Yeah.
Okay. So today I've chosen to do my economic presentation on what I'm going to call the Great Wall of Mexico and how this is a massive political failure in the principality of labor reform. So I'm sure you guys have all heard about this proposed idea by one of the Republican nominee hopefuls, Donald Trump. So he wants to build a wall dividing the United States from Mexico from the southern border from the western part to the eastern part. So he obviously believes it will work and that it will keep out drug cartels, supposedly rapists, and kind of internalized jobs in the U.S. So I'm just going to start off with a few key terms that I'm going to be kind of referring to throughout this lesson, and I'm sure you guys all know what these are. So anyone want to tell me what market failure is? You.
Wow, when the economy doesn't efficiently allocate their resources.
Very good. Labor costs. So labor cost is the sum of all wages paid to employees. Productivity is the measurement of effectiveness of a labor worker in regards to producing a given level of goods. Supply of labor is a set number of hours an employee will work at a given wage rate. And scarcity, I'm sure you guys all know what scarcity is. Anyone want to give it a shot? Yes.
There's a limited number of resources.
Exactly. So the economic implications of this event. So right now, the wall would cost upward of $50 billion. That includes maintenance, that includes upkeep, that includes the building of the wall itself, and the amount of pay you're going to have to pay the workers to man the wall in the first place. Putting up this wall would take away about 70% of agricultural industry laborers because 70% of these laborers are illegal immigrants that come from Mexico and that kind of sustain our agricultural industry. As well as that, there would be a loss of 5.2% of the entire labor force in general, because that 5.2% accounts for illegal immigrants and people that have come to the United States to find work. So this graph sort of represents the expected downfall if we were to put up this wall. So the supply line number one kind of represents what it is right now. So we have very low wages and a lot of jobs. So you can see there, and if it was to shift over to the left, we would be lowering the amount of jobs we have working on farms, working on these kind of lower wage jobs, but we'd be raising the prices, in turn losing productivity and paying more for the same work, which would be detrimental to the economy. So just kind of my event analysis. So, like I said, reducing the amount of workers would lead to a scarcity in supply of resources. So a few of these resources that we'd be kind of losing would be things such as strawberries, avocados, sort of things that we kind of take for granted in our economy. We'd have a scarcity of these goods and products because we wouldn't have the same laborers to be going out there and getting these things that we kind of take for granted oftentimes. Again, we'd be paying these new workers higher wages and losing productivity, which would be very detrimental to the economy because we simply do not have the amount of money that we would need to pay these people, and then in turn losing a lot of the resources that we are getting from the illegal immigrants working for lower wages. So what are the effects? Loss of cheap labor. That's a huge impact that would kind of dictate the way we would be able to go to the store and buy sort of these human goods that we take for granted so often. So an example of that would be if we were to go to the grocery store, and already avocados are so expensive. If we we were to go to the grocery store without these illegal immigrants working for cheap wages, we would have to be paying an estimate 5 times more than so it's just a general disruption to the economy. We would it's a general disruption to the economy because it takes away sort of these human goods that we take for granted. And then it tremendously affects the agricultural industry because, again, it's losing, they would be losing 70% of their task force. Losing 70% of their task force would leave, of course, 30%, good math, remaining to do all of these jobs that a lot of the majority of us wouldn't necessarily want to go out and do. So what is sort of the solution? Simply do not build a wall. Do not put us, we can't be put in a position to kind of be at fault for losing all of these jobs. And on this graph here, you can kind of see that 16.1% of illegal immigrants that come to the United States and look for jobs stem from all over, but the largest portion comes from Mexico and Central America. And then we sort of have to realize that this issue is not just something that comes directly from Mexico, but it's an issue that stems from sort of all of these places around the world, and they're coming to the United States to find sort of these cheaper wage jobs in order to find better lives for themselves and for their families. So some key questions that I'm going to ask you guys. Given the blunt information, is this issue something that stems directly, or is this the direct result of political dysfunctionality, or does this issue stem from our own inability to internalize cheap labor? In other words, do we have a hard time sort of internalizing cheap labor and kind of having United States citizens go out and work in the fields for cheap wages, and what are the effects of that? Yeah.
I just don't think that people like, in the United States, from the United States, like want to go out and work like really, really, really cheap jobs. Because I think that the people that are working really cheap jobs, like they are immigrants and they're doing it because like they kind of have to. They
Yeah.
can't like get a real job.
So do you think putting, yeah,
I mean, I just don't think that they have to be really, really cheap jobs. I think the political dysfunctionality comes from the fact that we don't care about working conditions for people who work in the agricultural industry. And yeah, I think that the wall is political dysfunctionality. I think that it's Trump trying to get get a reaction out of people. That's basically what his platform is.
right. So would putting up the wall sort of prevent the middle class, lower class, even the upper class from kind of receiving these goods and products that we so often take for granted? Because we wouldn't have necessarily the amount of workers to go out and sort of pick the fruits, the things we take for granted. All right, well, if it was up to you guys, would you build a wall dividing the United States from Mexico? Madison?
Absolutely not. It's not a good use of the money. And also there is evidence showing that like the majority of undocumented immigrants in the United States are not ones who came illegally. They came legally on a visa. They got work temporary visa and then just overstayed. And so the wall actually wouldn't, it's just not an efficient use of money. It just costs more.
I mean, do you want to?
I was just gonna say like, nah, like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. It would not be a good use of our money, but I think Trump's platform says that Mexico should be paying for the wall.
Exactly, yeah.
My guess is that if by some random happenstance Donald Trump got elected president and said, okay, Mexico, time to do this, my guess would be Mexico would be like, no, they
Yeah.
would do it.
Yeah.
And why would they? They probably can't afford it.
Yeah.
Even.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, thank you guys.